Well, hi, everybody. Welcome. I'm Sarah Dobeck, and you are on Practical Ideas for Growth. I'm excited today to welcome back Katie Renault, who's a member of our team. We're going to be talking a little bit more about some of these iOS 15 changes and what that's going to mean for analytics reporting, especially on the email marketing side. Katie and our team here has been doing a lot of research on this, is one of our go-to experts on the topic. So Katie, welcome.
Thank you.
Great. I know that not everybody has an Apple iPhone, but I think generally we find that a good percentage of professional services buyers do. Do you have any idea kind of what percentage, Katie, people are using that? And maybe not so much for email, but just in general, we see a lot of that on web-based activity.
Yeah, so a good rule of thumb to keep in mind is statistically thinking, you want to estimate about 52% of your email marketing list is using Apple Mail, is a user of an Apple product like an iPhone, an iPad, an iWatch. So you want to estimate a little more than half. So these big changes, they definitely are something you want to have on your radar.
Yeah. And that's interesting because I'm not even sure I realized how much that had crept up. We looked at analytics all the time. And so I think that was interesting to me, especially as we started digging into some of these changes that Apple roll out. And I know not everybody kind of updates right away the new iOS. It usually happens a little bit over time, but there's a lot of people that definitely do and do adopt it, especially if they're buying the new iPhone because it just sort of automatically comes with whatever the current iOS is on that. So let's talk a little bit about what some of those changes were a few weeks ago and some of the provisions that are impacting email marketing metrics. And can you kind of walk us through those, Katie?
Yeah, sure. So there were three big changes that Apple rolled out with their iOS 15 update. So the first one being mail privacy protection. So this allows an Apple user to hide their IP address. It ultimately means that a sender can no longer use those invisible pixels to gather information like open rates, location, device type for any Apple user who opts in. So what's happening in the background essentially is Apple is opening all the emails, even if users aren't opening the emails. So in September, when this rolled out, if you also saw an jump in your open rates for any email campaigns that you went out, it's very likely that it could be attributed to Apple's iOS 15 update. Um, so something you want to keep in mind. Another big one was the private relay. Now, this is available to iCloud Plus subscribers only currently. Now, that could definitely change, but private relay is when a user can hide their IP address when they're using Safari to browse. And what Apple is essentially doing is they're applying masks to the browser's identity and web history and IP address so that users can use Safari to browse without providing their IP address. So that's another big one. And then third and finally, the hide my email. I thought this one was the most interesting. Again, this is only available to iCloud Plus subscription service providers, and that could change certainly. But users can create a disposable email address, which I think is so interesting from a marketing perspective. So if someone's interacting with your business and they don't want to avoid, or they don't want to share their personal information, so let's say you're asking them for an email address to download your free guide or an ebook, and the user doesn't want to do that. With this new feature, they can get around that using a disposable email address. So I thought that one was a real big game changer as well.
That's super interesting. Not surprising, but also a little bit scary for marketers that have relied on a lot of these analytics to help inform some of what they're doing. And of course, like with everything, I think some of this has been abused, hence the reason for some of these changes, but also interesting to sort of align as we look at what's happening around the world with, a few years ago, probably at this point, GDPR implementation. Canada's had pretty strong can spam laws for a long time. And the US has lagged behind that. And so I'm guessing that this is a reflection of some of those feelings with lack of, kind of federal mandates and laws here in the US on some of this and just overall sentiment. there's so much that I think that professional marketers haven't capitalized on, and now with these changes, I'm not sure that they'll get a chance to capitalize on some of these. So, Katie, what do you think about that, and how do you think firms should be adjusting, what they're tracking, and what does this really mean, for them when it comes to measuring things like meaningful engagement with their content and their marketing efforts?
Yeah, I think these are all big game changers. And to your point that you made earlier, I think the data is just going to become more and more skewed as more people adopt these security updates. I mean, I myself, I'm a slow rollout. I don't raise my hand and immediately update to the newest security update, but eventually we'll all be forced to do that. Or I'm thinking, the holiday season, everyone getting new iPhones and devices that are going to come with iOS 15 on them. So it's really important to be aware of how changes like these are going to impact your email marketing campaigns. Ultimately, I think it's just at the beginning. I think we're headed, Apple, yes, they dipped their toe in the water, they're doing this, but I think that we're going to move in this direction of what I'm seeing the term a lot, cookieless environment. I think we're headed that
Mhm.
direction. So it's really important from a marketing perspective to start thinking about, okay, how is this going to impact our email marketing campaigns? What do we need to do? And a few things that you could start doing now is, redefine your metrics. So first and foremost, don't rely so heavily on that open rate as a success indicator for your emails. Um, A/B testing, subject line testing, it's also not going to be as reliable if you're using that to determine who your most active subscribers are. You also want to be careful about if you're doing some type of list segmentation and email automation using behaviors. So if you're looking at resending to non-openers, well, now you don't really have a true picture of who your non-openers are. So what you really want to do is be looking at the click rates. So you want to be looking at what are they clicking? What links are they clicking? So if your emails don't have any links or hyperlinks to your website, you're really at a huge disadvantage. Those links are going to become even more important, having strong call to actions and using those to your advantage.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I also kind of wonder, right, that there's been this trend in publications, right? So any kind of media publications where you really have to register now to view any of the content. And I wonder if we're going to see a lot more of that as a result of locking down what was traditionally very much free content to requiring subscriptions to be able to log in and out to see that information, and how that's really going to come into play for a lot of firms on the marketing side. Because I could see that being one of the few ways that you could actually track engagement, with people, with some of these other changes that are coming into play, unless there's a new piece of technology that might, surpass some of the pixels. But I don't think I've seen it yet. Doesn't mean it doesn't exist, but I have yet to get wind of some of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing you could do too is when you're signing on new subscribers, use that as an opportunity to capture information about their interests when they sign up to receive your communications. Have them sign up for different interest lists. That's a good chance to also segment your list.
hmm I couldn't agree more. We've found a great deal of success with our clients, in the last 18 months of really segmenting content and seeing really good response rates, well above national averages for engagement in that content when they're getting the stuff that they really want to be getting information on. And I think that's been really helpful. And for a lot of the firms that we serve, I know that's been a difficult challenge for many of them, because even just getting to the data to segment your basic client list has been a huge challenge. And I know that was one of the things that COVID exposed, was the state of our data and the state of our lists. For some of that, I can't, you've been right there along with our clients and trying to clean up a lot of this over the last 18 to 24 months. And I think that's going to become even more critical as we talk about, personalization of email communications and segmentation, and getting people the right information that they actually care about.
Yep. Yeah. It's not. It's more so. You want them. It's beyond opening now. Now it's okay. They've opened your email. We need them to engage with it. Click different links, and that's really how you're going to get valuable information and rich data.
Yeah. So what are some of the things, Katie, that we, we think we should be advising clients on, and as far as what are we looking at as far as metrics, right? You listed a few, but some of these metrics flow all the way through to the website. Some of them flow through to social media. So, what should firms be measuring now as we start to make this transition, and keeping this in mind? We're not completely there across the board, with iOS 15, but knowing that this is probably only going to pick up steam, not, slow down.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. So analytics can be overwhelming. There's so many things you can track. So if you log into your email marketing analytics, your Google analytics, your social media analytics, there's so much data, so it can be overwhelming. Where do you start? So there's a few really good analytics that we look at on a reoccurring basis. So first and foremost, in your Google Analytics, looking at your website, we value pages per session. So, the total number of pages viewed during a session on your site. So, having more pages per session means someone's coming to your website, they're interacting with it, and they're exploring it. So you definitely want to pay attention to your pages per session on your Google Analytics. And you also want to equally pay attention to your bounce rate. So this is the percentage of visits that result in someone coming to your website and leaving quickly. It can be an indicator that they're not seeing what they're looking for. So they're visiting and they're leaving quickly. So we want to definitely keep an eye on bounce rate as well. And then finally, the referral sources can also be a great analytic to look at and track each month. Take a look at these and monitor, where are your website visitors coming from? It helps you evaluate, where your different efforts are. Are they coming from the emails you're sending out? Are they coming from social media? Are they coming from just a Google search? How are they getting to your website? I would really look at those three each month.
Yeah, those are great tips. And I think that as firms refine their strategies, being able to kind of map some of that can be really important. So many firms put so much stock and value into how many visitors they have, but not necessarily what those visitors are doing. And, by and large, I think one of the things that we generally see is that there's so many channels that will, are informing your sales process and bringing people to you, and understanding those channels is really important. But more importantly, how do we convert those? And I don't think firms spend enough time on that conversion process. And email marketing is just one of the many things that drives some of those channels today.
Yeah, absolutely. And then if we're talking in terms of social media analytics, again, equally overwhelming. There's so much data out there. So, where should you really focus? And a couple of good places to start, look at your click-through rate. So this is the number of clicks on content by someone who's on that social media platform. It's helpful to monitor because you can see how effective your content is in driving people to your website. So take a look and monitor your click-through rate on social media, and also look at your engagement rate. And this is calculated by looking at the engagement on a piece of content divided by the number of users following your account. This is one of the most important metrics you can look at, your engagement rate. It gives you an idea of really a pulse check. Is the content that you're producing appealing to your audience? Are you connecting with them? And you can look at this engagement rate each month and say, wow, this content did really well. Let's do more of that. Or, this one didn't really hit home. Maybe we need to make adjustments.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I find it interesting. One of the things that we do, certain platforms allow you to actually measure how you're doing against some of your competitors. And so you can actually see how other firms in your area are performing. And this has been a good way to kind of measure success for a lot of firms who don't always have a way to measure success, right? You're a different size, you have different marketing metrics and efforts. But it's really interesting when you can kind of start seeing, maybe 1% is a good engagement rate instead of, an expectation of 50%. And I'm not sure we've ever seen an engagement rate of 50% that's out there. It's got to be a pretty rare instance or a pretty small audience that's driving that. But I think that those things are really good, important tips. And as with everything in marketing, it seems like it's changing by the minute. So, Kitty, thank you so much for joining us today to talk a little bit about this. I would encourage our audience today listening now or in one of our replays, if you have questions about any of this, please feel free to reach out and ask us. We love answering questions and like giving input. Kitty, any final thoughts?
No, just we're here for the journey. I mean, there's going to be a lot of change, and we're happy to help you as you help navigate this together, the new security updates and how data is going to change, and we're here to help if you need it.
Great. Thank you so much, Katie.
Bye-bye.